Welcome in everybody to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and we are continuing on with our Ultimate Guide series. Today, we are going to catcher, and there's no better person to talk about the backstops than the guy who wrote them all up in this year's Fantasy Baseball Black Book 2026, available on Amazon right now. He's the one, the only KC Bubba. Bubba, it's so good to see you, my friend. Every year you do the catcher profiles, you do the relief pitchers for me as well. And of course, you host your own podcast. You're a man of many hats, and that's what I like the most about you. But unlike a lot of bald guys, you don't wear the hat on the show. You show it proudly like I do, and I just want to say I respect that.
Yeah, so I was mentored by one bald, bearded, beautiful man at one point in time. So, yeah, I've learned many things. And Joe, you'll be there soon enough. Don't you worry. At least the bald part. Don't know if I could help you with the rest.
That's what I heard, Orrico. I heard Orrico's going quicker, but I never see it because he's hiding it.
He's always got the lid. He's always got the lid on. When you first go bald, you kind of try to hide it, but you don't. But first, thanks for letting me join you guys. Of course, always love talking to my boys over here in Fantasy Pros land. It's great to catch up with Joe. I haven't talked to Pisapia. Sorry, two Joes tonight. Pisapia, I haven't talked to you. I haven't talked to you in a while, so that's been great to catch up with you. Joe, Orrico, I talk to you often. I still appreciate it, but it's great to catch up with both of you guys. Have some fun talking catchers. My passion project, all because of years of writing for it at the Black.
There you go. And of course, Joe, Orrico, and Bubba were hanging out last night doing a live stream together. It ended late. Joe Orrico went out for burgers after. It was like the single guy lifestyle, where he's just, I'm just doing baseball drafts and going out for burgers at 11 o'clock. That's what kind of road you're living on here. Maybe that's why what's under that hat's starting to fall apart. Maybe they take a little better care of yourself, Joe Orrico. I'm just saying.
Look, everybody who knows my medical history over the last couple of years with the repeated kidney stones knows that I do not take proper care of myself. But that is, being a single guy, being the bachelor, I definitely need to clean it up. Yeah, and maybe I will. Once I get closer to 30, I turned 27 the other day. And once I hit 30, maybe then I'll start to clean it up.
You have the most old man energy of any youth I've ever met in my whole life. I thought Andrew Erickson was bad with his dad jokes, but you push it to what you were like on the porch in the rocking chair. It is crazy, bro.
Yeah, I'm kind of a curmudgeon. I've become this way from being a Toronto sports fan for the majority of my life and watching teams continually fail, whether it is in the regular season, the first round of the playoffs, or in extra innings of the World Series. We're not going to go down that road. But I do want to say, before we kick it off, I did watch a movie last night, and it was
After the Burgers?
After the burgers. I'm a night owl, and I watched The Natural to pay tribute to the great Robert Duvall, and I just wanted to tip my hat to him. One of the absolute greatest actors of all time. Rest in peace, Mr. Duvall.
True craftsman, indeed. Love Robert Duvall. Very sad. All right. I don't want to be sad. I want to think about the great career of Robert Duvall. 95 years old. That's a good run. It's a good run, Joe. He was out there. He was probably running laps, not eating burgers. That's what he was doing. All right, let's get to the show here. Before we do, quick shout out to, we're giving away free stuff here. Fantasy Baseball Championship belt could be yours from Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy sports hardware. This is your moment. It's bold. It's 6 pounds of glory, and it could be yours or the winner in your league if you want to give it to them, or you can just keep it for yourself. I don't care what you do with it. It's yours if you win, and you could win it by subscribing to our Fantasy Pros MLB channel and dropping a comment on this or any of the shows. That's it. That's all you got to do. And don't forget, we'll be announcing the winner here on the channel, so make sure you turn on those notifications, ring the bell till it goes ding, so you never miss a piece of content here on Fantasy Pros MLB, and you could be the big winner of the Fantasy Baseball Championship belt giveaway. All right, we're going to take a breakdown here of the top 12 catchers, and let's start with Cal Raleigh. Decent season for him. I think we could all agree. The first question, though, because it's Cal Raleigh and then everybody else, we all know this. Bubba, for him to return his overall ADP, currently where it's at, what's the number of home runs you're looking at for him to hit where you're like, I still feel good about him as a second-round pick with this stat line in terms of home runs?
For me, I'm probably greedy and wanting 40-plus with Raleigh. Okay. Most projections have him going 40-plus, which is, I guess maybe I'm light on the subject. Just because a catcher too, you really got to get a heck of a return because he stole you more bags than you'd expect last year, so that helps. He's not a complete loss in that category. But this is a guy that usually doesn't hit 250. We're not going to get 60 home runs again. So I want at least 40 home runs if I'm creeping up here, because there's enough catchers that are going to hit you probably 25, 30 plus home runs. He needs to separate himself to be a second round pick.
Yeah, 60 home runs, 124 RBI. Now, he played in 159 games, too. That's also tough when you're behind the plate so much. 14 steals, again, very obviously something you're not looking for a lot of catchers to give you that many stolen bases, especially the ones that give you power. But Orrico, where, in your opinion, if I'm going to flip this question, would he become a bust as a second-round pick? If he hits less than 30, does that basically mean he was not a good investment in 2026?
Yeah, I think part of it would, of course, depend on the other factors about how many runs and RBI he's driving in. Because if he does go down to, say, about 30 homers, but he maintains close to 100 runs and ribbies, I think people would be mostly okay with that. I've personally stayed away from Raleigh. It's generally one of my tenets in fantasy baseball or any fantasy sport. You kind of fade after the massive season and the massive increase in price. And seeing Raleigh with an ADP inside the top 20, especially when catchers are so deep, we'll get into it. There are so many great catchers. And even just a few years ago, you would really, really want to take a guy like Raleigh after a year like that, just because the pool was only 3 or 4 guys that you could really rely upon. And now there are maybe 15, 16 guys that you feel pretty okay about. So I don't really feel the need to push Raleigh up the board. I think there's a good chance that he busts just because repeating that type of season is so incredibly hard. I think even if he does hit 30 homers, drives in 90, scores 85, that probably wouldn't, if you're looking at, a dollar value, it probably wouldn't be a second round player. Other factors would come into play there, of course, but I think that there's a very good chance that he busts this year.
Well, it's been a while too. Like Langeliers, Goodman, Perez, all guys who had 30 home runs last year, a catcher. Yep. And it's been, I feel like it has been a very long time since we've had that many guys, but you got to go back to I feel like it's like the Javi Lopez, Mike Piazza era of catchers where you had a bunch of guys hitting 30 bombs, right, Bubba? Right? Like it's in the Wayback Machine.
It's called the steroid era, Joe.
You know what?
That's what I know. You're a fan. You're a fan. We've talked about this many times.
Everybody played every week, didn't they? They all. I don't remember making nearly as many deals on the IL and dropping players and picking guys up as the fantasy.
No one knew what an oblique injury was then.
Oh my God, no, because they all had just massive obliques were so enormous. Nobody could possibly break them. All right, so number 2 is William Contreras. Slow start for him. He did pick things up in the second half. Then you have Ben Rice at 3, Shea Langeliers at 4. I want to talk about these two guys here, Bubba. Let's talk about Ben Rice and Langeliers, and I'll put them up for debate. Langeliers last year, as I mentioned, did have 30 homers. A good season, plays in a great ballpark factor at home, too, in that little tiny ballpark for the Athletics in Sacramento. 72 RBI, he had 274, 7 steals. Ben Rice, a player that I had the privilege to kind of watch grow up, basically, in the Yankee system around the corner from my house, and I watched him play a lot over the last couple of years. And I knew he was going to be a good major league player. 26 homers for him last year, hit 255. He's going to play some first base as well. So let's talk about Rice and Langeliers. Currently, Rice is ahead of Langeliers. Do you agree with that ranking?
Do I agree with it? No. Do I understand why it is it? Yes. He's getting he's ahead of Langeliers because he's going to be the primary first baseman for the Yankees. Now they brought Goldschmidt in, so there's a slight platoon, but they still said that Rice will play plenty against lefties, and he's going to be the backup to Wells. They're not going to bring another backup in. So Rice is going to play a ton, and that's one thing you're going to notice by a lot of these top ADP catchers. A lot of it's playing time. And like you mentioned with Raleigh, he played 159 games. That's crazy for a catcher. But like a lot of these guys are either going to DH and catch and play first base. Like there's avenues. So that's why Rice gets the love he gets. He's going to accumulate a ton based on what he does. But in the end, I think Langeliers is the better hitter. I think Langeliers, if he gets enough playing time via DH, or even if Rice somehow does miss time, like maybe all of a sudden Goldie does eat into the platoon situation and they still want Wells to catch in New York. A lot of what ifs. But I'm a believer in Langeliers. The adjustments he made last year, we saw a guy drop his K rate 8% last season. That's a massive drop. So I'm not saying he can do that again, but let's just say he meets in the middle. And now like projections have him around 22, 23%. That's still better than anything he's done before last season. 277 average, probably not likely, but what's wrong with 250, 260? Very good for him, especially in that ballpark. He showed great plate discipline changes. He's like quality of contact continues to be elite for Shea Langeliers, as we call him. I absolutely love Langeliers this year. Nothing against Rice. I think he's going to be very good because he will accumulate. But if we're just comparing catching talents, I think Langeliers is the better catcher. And I would not be shocked when when I write the black book for 2027, quote unquote, if there's a season, that
there will be eventually.
Yes, there will be. It's just when does it happen and
when does it happen?
Is another story. Langeliers, I think, will have the better season than Ben Rice.
And obviously, you know, strategy changes quite a bit in terms of overall ADP when you're in those 2 catcher leagues. If you're still playing in those, like just continue to ask yourself, why do you hate your life? Why? Why do you do that to yourself? I don't understand. Joe Orrico, I want to talk about those 2 guys and get your perspective too. If Rice is on the board, Langeliers is on the board, who would you rather take? And let me throw this out at you too. Overall ADP wise, is it too early for you to jump into the catcher pool?
This is where it really comes down to the format you're playing. I play a lot of 2 catcher leagues like Bubba does, and you don't need to take an early catcher, but if you look at a lot of the successful teams at the end of the year when people are doing their reviews, a lot of the teams that win the big money contests in the 2 catcher formats tend to take at least one of their catchers fairly early. So I'm on board with it. You know, in the auction I did last night, I paid up $21 for William Contreras. I think having one stabilizer in those 2 catcher formats is really important. If you're playing in a 1 catcher league, then paying a 4th round pick for any catcher, I think is pretty ridiculous, right? If you're playing on Yahoo and you see Ben Rice is going in the 40s or 50s, as much as I like Ben Rice and Langeliers, I can't see myself paying that. They're both phenomenal, and I have them back-to-back in my catcher rankings. The most recent time I updated was a couple weeks ago. It needs a bit of a refresh, but it was Rice at 3 and Langeliers at 4. I don't really have a strong opinion between them. I think they're both exceptional. Rice's StatCast page, we mentioned him a little bit on the first base show. Everything is like 95th percentile or better for a guy who was really his first true season in the big leagues. It was phenomenal. And if you're looking at what Shea Langeliers did, it was just as good almost. He missed 30 games and he still hit 31 homers. He stole 7 bases. He hit for a good average. Bubba mentioned the strikeout rate going down. I think they're both really, really good. And I think Ben Rice in particular has the potential to maybe have that kind of 2nd round ADP next year if he maintains that catcher first base eligibility as a Yankee. I think that he's the guy that people will probably shoot for the moon a little bit for in their drafts, but I think that they're both so good. And one last thing about Ben Rice is that people will say like, oh, he hit 208 against lefties, he shouldn't play against them, it should be Goldschmidt. He had a 104 WRC plus and a 752 OPS against lefties. So he's not a horrible hitter against lefties. He can still definitely take care of himself.
All right, so after Langeliers at 4, Hunter Goodman coming off another 30 home run season for him, as I discussed earlier. A lot of catchers with 30 bombs. Alvarez at 6. Then we have Agustin Ramirez at 7. Bubba, I want to talk to you about Ramirez, a player that fun to watch, swings hard. He's in that swing hard in case you made contact kind of grouping for me always. He's one of those kind of players. But a player that was acquired a couple years ago from the Yankee system. Last year, 21 homers. He came on really fast, right? And then things kind of slowed down a little bit for him. So what does your 2 look like, in your opinion, for Ramirez here with the Marlins?
The Goose, as we like to call him. Again, lots of nicknames on Bub and the Blue. I'm just going to throw that out there with the Goose. Absolutely love him. And it's a kind of a combination of just young. You mentioned the swing and see how hard he can hit it. StatCast is crazy, which is great to see this past season. 11% barrel rate, 47% hard hit rate, 117 max EV for a guy in his first stint in the big league level at 23 is outstanding. But what I love about him the most, when I kind of mentioned it with Cal Raleigh. Yeah, Raleigh has a ton of home runs, threw in some steals. That's great. Most catchers don't steal bases. The Goose is loose in Miami, folks. Like he runs and runs often. He had 16 stolen bases last year in 136 games to go with his 21 home runs. Yes, a 231 average, but quite unlucky for a guy that strikes out less than 20% of the time. His XBA was over 250. So there's a world where the average could pop up. And a full season of Goose, yes, everyone's going to point to his bad defense. It is. He's working on it. He's young. Could get better. Same time, he can DH. His bat is too good to leave the lineup in Miami. So this is like what we used to love about JT Realmuto, where you got 15 to 20 steals, 20-plus home runs. Like this is JT Realmuto right now. Maybe not the same batting average, but the skill set is ridiculous. And if you can get 4.5 to 5 categories at your catching position from a young player that could still be developing, give me all the Agustin Ramirez as you can get.
I like the way you put it, Realmuto without the batting average. I think that makes a lot of sense there. And that's why he's 7, because that one category is going to hurt you a little bit. I don't think if he got to 250, I think you'd be like, cool, sign me up. Like I'm there for that. I don't know if
because and real quick, just for instance, what he did last year in that small sample, if you look at any player rater out there, he ended up being a top 10 catcher. Didn't even play a full season. And it's because of the steals. Like you mentioned, if he hits for average, he's a top 5 catcher, and we're having a different conversation next year.
Well, it's funny because, all the way down at 8 is the rookie of the year, Drake Baldwin, a guy who had a season that kind of came out of nowhere, too. No stolen bases for him. 19 homers, 270 batting average, though. Excellent year for the Braves. And I have to imagine, guys, we like him more this year, potentially, too, with a healthy Ronald Acuna, maybe a bounce back year from guys like Albies. All of a sudden, if that team is healthier, Drake Baldwin can only get better. Sophomore slumps aside, certainly a good situation there. Next on our list, Will Smith at 9, Adley Rutschman at 10. So he makes up the top 10. Let's talk about Rutschman, because this is a guy who's been, dare I say, a little overrated. He's starting to turn into Matt Wieters 2.0 for me at a certain point where I'm just like, you know what? I'm tired of everybody telling me how good this guy's going to be. And I understand young catchers sometimes will struggle a little bit early on, Joe, because you're trying to get these guys to learn all the pitchers, figure out all the mix, figure out all calling the games, doing all the stuff that they do. But at some point, Adley Rutschman has to show better results. And I feel like every year we're sitting here trying to make excuses for him, and the numbers are kind of going backwards. A couple years ago in 2023, 2080 season, 277. The batting average fell off the next year down to 250. Last year bottomed out. He only played 90 games, so he had some injuries. We get that. But hitting only just 221 with 9 homers and 29 RBI over that 90-game span is not great. So Rutschman at this point, still not an old player by any stretch. He is older than Joe Orrico, but not by much. He's 28. So Joe Orrico, what are your thoughts on Adley Rutschman this year? You are getting a discount, which I do like, but is the discount enough in terms of return on investment?
Yeah, I really, really trust Adley Rutschman, and maybe that's me, but I also, he just turned 28 a couple of weeks ago, and we're talking about a guy who's already put together 2 seasons of 5+ wins. He has a 115 WRC plus, a 755 OPS for his career. I mean, he's still a really good player, I think. He had a bad season in 2025 that was plagued by a bunch of injuries. There's an abdomen injury, there's a couple of oblique problems. It caused him to miss a bunch of time, but when you look below the surface, nothing really changed in terms of the data in a negative way. The average exit velocity at 89.4 was the best of his career. 7.5% barrel rate was right where he has been for the first few seasons of his career. The hard hit rate, it's not a great number at 38, but it didn't plummet. It's where it has been. He cut the chase rate from 30% to 22%, maintained really good contact rates. The swinging strike rate is only 5%. I think he's still the same player who's just dealt with some injuries, and now he is going to be in a lineup that, it's taken some hits recently with the Westberg news and the Holiday news, but still a really good lineup where Pete Alonso will be hitting right in front of him, as well as Gunnar Henderson, Taylor Ward, Westberg if he's healthy. You got Beavers and Cowser behind him. I think that you can project a close to 20 home run season with 80 runs, 80 RBI, and he's a guy who's shown that he can hit for average and be a great asset in OBP leagues. I'm really curious, Bubba, why is it that you're so down on him?
A couple of things. I've been down on him for a few years, so check. We got those ones done. But the Matt Wieters 2.0 comment makes me smile every time because I can use that on some other shows.
Have you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's perfect. I haven't heard anybody else say it. No, so like
great minds, handsome bald men think alike.
Yeah, to hear someone agree is what I'm saying. Like, okay, perfect. I'm not seeing things here. There's a lot of similarities besides just the production, but the biggest reason, Joe, and I don't disagree. Like you look at the quality of contact metrics, you look at a lot of the stats, things are very similar for Adley Rutschman. That is great. But what Adley Rutschman needs to do to be good is accumulate. That's what Adley Rutschman needs to do. There's this other catcher, not sure if you've heard of him, named Samuel Basallo in Baltimore, which the team has flat out said they want him to be their catcher of the future. And when Adley came back from the IL last year, do you know who still caught games for the Orioles? Samuel Basallo. Now, things can change, but I think at best, we're talking Rutschman gets a 65-35 split at best. It feels very 50-50, or Basallo might end the season with the plus side of this argument. If Adley can't accumulate, he can't produce fantasy goodness at that ADP. That's my concern with Adley Rutschman. I think if he plays another 155 games like he did 2 seasons ago and hit the 20 home runs and hit 277, gravy. We're asking a lot to make that happen is my concern.
All right, the last 2 guys to round out the top 12, Yainer Diaz of Houston and Alejandro Kirk, a good friend of Joe Orrico. They go out for burgers late at night together, I'm sure of it. So again, a pretty strong 12, a single catcher league. I think you can wait on catcher. I like to do that and get some value. I think Will Smith is a good value. He's playing that Dodger lineup. He'll always just produce. So if you want a guy at cost who's a good value, I think Will Smith would be that guy. Some good debates, some good guys to pick out, too, that they love. But before we get into the next tier of catchers, I want to remind everybody, too, if you're trying to level up your game this draft season, there's only one way to do it, and that is to work out. Okay. So you got to go and you got to use the draft simulator over Fantasy Pros. That way you can start running mock drafts and getting prepared. Guys are already doing drafts. These two were doing one last night. So the only way to get ready is to flex the muscles and do that. And that's where Draft Simulator comes in. You can set it to your league settings. You can make picks. You don't like how things are going, you can undo picks. You can start it over again. It'll give you all the breakdowns at the end. It gives you the grades. It gives you the expert opinions. It tells you where you should have gone in different spots. And when the drafts are going live, it'll give you insights and it'll give you recommendations as well. You can create cheat sheets. There's so many amazing things you can do, but you have to use the tools. So don't be a tool. Use the tools and use Draft Simulator right now. Download the Fantasy Pros MLB app as well for Draft Wizard. And of course, go to fantasypros.com/draft wizard if you want to try it out. And of course, then you could take all that knowledge and all of that repetition that you've done and go ahead and start your leagues over at Fantrax. They have year-round engagement, 365 days a year. Those leagues are up and running. So if you're running Keeper and Dynasty leagues, Fantrax is the superior site to do that. Nothing ever shuts down there. Of course, you can trade draft picks over there, which I love. You can do multi-team trades, which I love. There's so many different bells and whistles that Fantrax has that a lot of sites just don't. In fact, you can even have giant leagues. You can have 200 managers. You can have whatever you want. You have duplicate players if you want to run a massive baseball league. Whatever you can envision, Fantrax can do it, and you can even bring your old existing leagues over there as well, which makes it really easy. So bring your fantasy baseball league to Fantrax today or start a new one, and you'll get an unbeatable user experience. Sign up today at fantrax.com/fantasypros. Again, use the URL fantrax.com/fantasypros. All right, gents, let's get to the next tier of catchers here, starting with Ivan Herrera, a guy that I was very high on recently too. We know the Cardinals are in a rebuild mode, but I think he's a nice player. Gives you some batting average. A lot of catchers don't. Give you some power. 19 homers, eight steals last year. Next up on the list here, coming in at number 14, Gabriel Moreno. Then you have Kyle Teel at 15, Samuel Basallo at 16. I want to pause here for a second on Basallo since you brought him up before, Bubba. So tell me this. Basallo in 2026. What does that stat line look like for him in your opinion? Because you do have Rutschman there, and I know there's a DH spot, and we're going to try to move guys around. But in terms of, I know Basallo last year, a cup of coffee, 31 games, not very impressive. But we know the minor league track record's good. Let's talk about what his upside is too in the current landscape of what the Orioles lineup looks like.
I think a floor, we're talking like 250, 15 home runs. He's not going to run much, but like in that lineup, he could give you, at least 60 runs and 60 RBIs. And I'm shooting low because I think he's obviously not playing every day. I think he probably gets at least 100 games in between DH and catching. That allows Adley to probably get about 100 in if it all shakes out. And that's just the difference. It's like I'm not going to be drafting either Oriole essentially because I don't know how it's going to shake out. If one had the job, it'd be great. But to your Basallo question, like perfect world, if you plays a full season, you got 20 plus home runs, and the guy that can hit 260 if he gets comfortable at the big league level. And now you're talking 70 to 80 runs and 70, 80 RBIs. Like I think he's that good, maybe even more once he gets comfortable in a few years. But 2026, I'd say 15 homers, 250 floor is kind of where you're looking.
I will say this too, going right ahead of him in the rankings right here, Kyle Teel. If you play in OBP leagues or if you play in two-catcher leagues with OBP, you need to circle Kyle Teel as a nice little value. Yeah, because that's a guy in the minor leagues who just gets on base. He's got a little pop. He's gonna make contact. He's not gonna strike out. He's not gonna kill you in points leagues either because he doesn't really strike out that much. Kyle Teel, I think, is a lot better than people realize. I like him as a player too, and the more I watched him in the minor leagues before he got called up, I liked what I saw. And now it's just a matter of the White Sox. He's getting better collectively. He doesn't have a whole lot of lineup protection. Coming in at 17, Francisco Alvarez is the next guy. Bubba, I know Teel was one of your guys too that you liked. So before we go to Alvarez, talk to me about Teel. Give me your opinion on him too, because I know that was a player you were excited about as well, not just me.
Yeah, I'll keep it kind of brief. It's the youth movement at catcher we've talked about over the last couple of years. Which powers up. He's the next wave. Obviously came from Boston in the sale trade. But what I like about him, he's kind of a poor man's JTR for me. He has the ability to get you like 15 home runs. He has the ability to steal 10 to 15 bases, but he hits for average and OBP, unlike Goose. So he might not have the power of Agustin Ramirez. Maybe not even stealing as many bases, but he'll hit for a better average. I get a two-catcher league. I love to pair those two because it gives you such a head start. Having that many steals from the catching position is crazy. Or if you're in a one-catcher league, I have zero problem walking away with Kyle Teel as my catcher. Zero problem. I think that's a totally great move.
So we've discussed Realmuto without discussing Realmuto, so we might as well bring him up. He is after Alvarez here on this list, coming in at number 18.
Orrico, I was out on Realmuto last year. There was a lot of things I did not like in the profile in the second half of last year that really concerned me. The age was starting to catch up to him. This is just the natural thing. It's like the end of Brian McCann's career. Really solid fantasy catcher for years and years, but you knew the writing was on the wall, and you know with the catcher, sometimes that decline happens fast, and I was very public about my fading of Realmuto. Where are you at with Realmuto landing back with the Phillies this year? Again, this is like a deep catcher question because this is not really a single catcher league problem, even in a 15-team league. So is Realmuto a guy that you just kind of leave alone at this point, or does he have any appeal for you in those two catcher formats?
No, I think he's a fine fallback option in two catcher formats. If he's your first catcher, I think you've definitely messed up a little bit. If he's the second catcher, I think it's fine. Again, another guy where if you dig below the surface, there's not like a huge fall off a cliff here. The barrel rates and hard hit rates have slightly gone down, but he's still about a 9% barrel, 45% hard hit, 90 average exit velocity is still pretty solid. The chase and swinging strike rates are about the same. The contact rates haven't really changed so much. I think that he can still give you maybe, 15 home runs. He's still going to chip in some stolen bases. Even in his bad years, he's not hurting you in the batting average department. He's a career 270 hitter. He's 257 last year, 266 the year before. So as a fallback option, he's not a huge target for me. In my own catcher rankings, I have him 19th. So he's just kind of whatever, especially if you're in those one catcher, 12-team leagues, you're not going to really have to worry about him. But I don't think that he is to be written off. I don't think that he is going to finish outside the top 30 or 40 catchers this year. I think he's still fine. He's nothing special, but he's fine.
Orrico, what do you think of Francisco Alvarez? He's been in the league for a couple of years, but he's still just 24. I think people forget how young he is. We kind of take for granted that he was a big catching prospect, a big prospect in the Met system that, came in, hit 25 homers. Okay, cool. We're off to the races. And then not so good the following year. And then last year, he had that hamate bone issue. He came back from it, couldn't hit for any power, went down to the minor leagues, and then came back and did look a little bit better after that. Where are you at with Alvarez? Because he is so young. I don't want to give up on him altogether. To me, he feels like the dice roll in the two catcher leagues. And you're like, hey, if this hits, this guy's a 25, 85 kind of catcher potentially in that lineup.
Yeah, what he showed last year, albeit over only, 277 plate appearances, was a 12% barrel rate, 54% hard hit rate. The average exit velocity was 93 miles an hour. He looked really, really good. Now, the contact and swing and miss issues are still there, but he doesn't have to hit 300 to return value. If he hits 25 home runs and gives you a 230 batting average, I think that that's totally fine considering where he's going. He's about 180 ADP over the last couple of weeks. Just looking at online championships on the NFBC, which is a 12-team league. I think that he is, again, kind of like that fine type of fallback. The more that I play, especially in the two catcher leagues, the more I do kind of want to take two of them early. I guess it's also just doing a ton of shows with Bubba over the years. The catcher kind of rubs off on you. I want to take two of the elite names, but if you don't nail down one of those early names, I think that you're fine falling back on Alvarez. I really like the lineup around him, and I think that the upside is still 30 plus home runs here if he's able to stay healthy over a whole season.
Bubba, you got Francisco Alvarez, who's 24 on the board, and JT Realmuto, who's 34 on the board. Who do you take between those two guys?
Oh, I'm taking Francisco all day. Like you guys, yeah. Joe, you started, or Joe Pisapia, you started to hit on it that I think he is that kind of lottery ticket in a two catcher league. He showed like actual gains last year. Kind of how you were off on JTR in recent years. I've been off on Francisco. Like, hey, I believe in you, but you're always hurt. You got to prove it to me. Yeah. Sure, he got hurt last year, but it was hit by pitches. Like, kind of take it out with a grain of salt. We actually saw improvements at the plate with him, like the quality of contact, the consistency in the power department. Like, he showed it for his full duration, even when he kept coming back, and he made adjustments at the plate. I'm going to go with Alvarez because you said 25. This guy's got 30. Like he could hit 40 home runs. I would not be shocked if Francisco Alvarez ever hit that someday.
No,
might not be this year,
but
I think he's got that in him, he is that perfect lottery ticket you talked about.
That Mets lineup is fascinating to me this year because you got all these guys like 1 year show me kind of deals, and you got guys like, we saw Vientos a couple of years ago, look like a 30 home run guy. You saw Beatty take a step forward. You see Alvarez with that potential of even two of the three guys like ends up hitting on something this year. It'd be really interesting to see how that all shakes out. But again, playing time might be tough for some of these guys too. All right, at number 19, you got Austin Wells. Then you got Carter Jensen. I want to pause here as the 20th catcher overall because this is Joe Orrico's target in this range. So Orrico, walk us through your thoughts on Carter Jensen.
Yeah, I've become a really big fan. If you look at what he did throughout the minors, he's giving you that power speed combination, and he's hitting for batting average as well. In 2025, it was 111 minor league games, 20 homers, 10 stolen bases. He hit 290. He gets on base a ton. It was a 377 on base rate. And he got called up 20 games in the bigs where it was 3 homers, 13% walk rate, 17% strikeout rate, and he hit 300. Now, again, it's a very small sample size, but he immediately was able to hit major league pitching. 95.4 average exit velocity, 21% barrel rate, and a 58% hard hit rate. Will it carry over to that degree? Very unlikely, but even if he's able to give you a 13, 14% barrel rate with speed behind the dish in a lineup that I think is really good. Now, I don't know how good they are going to be in terms of actual baseball, but in terms of fantasy value, I think the Royals are going to be really, really fun. Garcia, Bobby Witt, Vinny P, Sal, Jack Caglione, and then I think you're going to have Carter Jensen probably hitting 6th in that lineup in a really good RBI spot, even if it is more of a strong side platoon, even if they're not playing him against lefties as much. I think he's still probably going to pay off close to his ADP of around 200 right now.
Rounding out the top 24, Logan O'Hoppe at 21, Ryan Jeffers at 22, Dylan Dingler at 23, and Tyler Stevenson at 24. It's funny, Bubba, you can go all the way down to almost 20 and still get a guy, Logan O'Hoppe, who's capable of hitting 20-plus bombs. That speaks to how different the catcher profile is right now offensively that it has been in quite some time.
It's beautiful. And I always joke back to when you first invited me to the Black Book, like no one wanted to write about catchers because it was horrible. And just to watch it develop, like I get excited about it now because like
look, it's not bad anymore,
like
guys.
Half the guys I write
fair,
about
cool.
half the guys I write about it's like, this is actually cool. And to also the point you're making, like O'Hoppe at 20, even Stevenson at 24, like
sure.
I know 2 catcher leagues are a bugaboo, and I understand where you come from. I understand both sides of the spectrum. Do what makes you guys happy. It's fantasy. But it shows you the depth at catcher too. Why like a Jensen or an Alvarez, you can take your chances because there's so many other options now. You don't have to like plant your flag on something crazy. So the depth is awesome at the catching position.
All right, we are going to plant our flag on some sleepers though in just a second. But before we do, shout out to the sponsor of today's show, and it's Hard Rock Bet. Today's show is brought to you by Hard Rock Bet, Hard Rock Sportsbook. If you haven't tried Hard Rock Bet yet, now's the time. What are you waiting for? $150 in bonus bets could be yours. All you have to do is place a $5 bet. If it hits, you get your winnings and $150 in bonus bets only at Hard Rock Bet. But you have to download the app, so download it today and make your first deposit on Hard Rock Bet. All right, let's talk about some sleepers here. Joe Orrico, we just heard Bubba mention Tyler Stevenson, and that's a player you want to talk about some more, the 24th catcher in the ranks. So let's talk about him.
Yeah, I mentioned that auction I did last night. I had Wild Bill or King William as my first catcher, $21. King William. But then my second catcher was a $3 Tyler Stevenson right at the end of the auction, which I felt really, really good about. He has shown flashes of being able to hit for average. He has a 286 season under his belt. And in the short stint in 2022, he hit 319. Now, I don't think he's going to hit 319, but I think he can hit somewhere close to his career mark of 261. He can hit for power. It was 19 home runs in 2024. 2025, I'm kind of throwing out. He only played half the season. He was injured. But yet, when he was on the field, he still hit for a 14% barrel rate, 49% hard hit rate, even though below, if you look on the surface, I should say, it was a 33% strikeout rate, a 231 batting average. I think people, by and large, are not terribly interested in him, but it's still an amazing park. It's a really, really good lineup in Cincinnati where good players may actually struggle to see the field, potentially Sal Stewart. I'm not going to go down that road. He'll probably play, but we're at the point where we're having the question if a guy like Sal Stewart is going to play because of how deep this lineup is. I think Stevenson is going to play pretty regularly, and I think we could easily see 20-plus home runs. And at his cost, he is not even in the top 20 catchers, a 277 ADP over the last couple of weeks. He's free 99.
All right, Bubba, give me a guy who we haven't even talked about yet who's a sleeper for you.
Yeah, I went way down the board just to throw one out there for people because I agree. Like, I love Stevenson, and Stevenson used to be a top 10 catcher for crying out loud. Like, how the mighty have fallen. I'm going to go with Bo Naylor just to remind people that we've talked about all these young catchers. Bo Naylor is only going to be 26 this year. Still very young. Like, there was a time when he was the next up-and-coming guy, and it's obviously not been great. Not great, Bob, is the best way I'll put it. We saw 14 homers, 1 steal last year, $195 average. That's not going to cut it. But I did want to highlight just the gains we saw as the season went along. Like, in the first half, he hit 171. Second half of the year, he hit 230. Like, we're showing some improvements. 5 homers in the second half. Not sure where the speed has gone. That's the big thing. But in the final month of the year, Naylor hit 290 with 3 of his 5 second-half home runs. So, like, I'm just looking at the minor things with Bo Naylor to try to grasp it if you're looking for a sleeper, like deep sleeper. for this type of stuff. But it's a guy that we even saw the strikeout rate drop like below 19% in September. It was below 20% for the second half of the season after striking out 27% in the first half. So everything improved in the second half of the season. It's a kid that started to get more consistent playing time instead of just platooning. He was the guy in the second half. Maybe he's getting comfortable. There's a lot of what ifs. I'm just throwing this out there. He showed drastic improvements in the second half of the season that maybe it just took him longer than some others to develop as a young pitcher.
All right, things are going to get real personal here in a second. We're going to talk about the busts because Joe Orrico has got a bust. Now, I don't know if it's just because he was mad about you not liking his Adley Rutschman take. It feels like there might be some passive aggressiveness here. I'm just saying. Joe Orrico, talk about why Samuel Basallo might be a bust this season.
Yeah, it's not often that I disagree with Bubba on a catcher, and I don't feel great about it. It doesn't give me that warm and fuzzy feeling, but I'm going to lay out my case for why Basallo is a bust. So if you're looking at the projected lineup right now, he's hitting at the bottom of the order. And when you look at the names at the top, it's hard to see Basallo fitting in anywhere in the top 6 or 7 names. I think at best, he's hitting 8th to start the year. Maybe he can hit his way up the lineup a little bit, but I don't see him hitting in the top third or even in the middle third of the lineup very regularly. He's not going to hit against lefties because the Orioles do have Mountcastle still. They still have Tyler O'Neill, who's on the bench, and I think that he is going to get the majority of the DH at bats when it comes against left-handed pitching. And I think there's a good chance that he'll start playing against righties as well. Basallo is still very young, 21 years old, and we have seen the Orioles over the last couple of years really slow play their prospects. They're not rushing guys to the big leagues and playing them when they're not ready. They've gone kind of the opposite end of that spectrum. They're leaving guys down even a year longer than most people expect them to, whether it's Kierstad or Holiday, whoever it is, not really Holiday, but there's a lot of examples over the last few years of Orioles prospects that take an extra year in the minors. Now, Basallo did get 31 games in the bigs last year, and it was pretty rough. He did hit 4 home runs, but he had 165 with a 229 on base rate. And I don't know that they're going to shoehorn at bats in here for him if he's not able to hit. And not to say that he's never going to be able to hit, but maybe he's not ready quite yet. You got to remember, he's only 21 years old, and if he's not ready, they still have Adley Rutschman, and this is part of why I like Adley Rutschman. I think if Basallo is not fully ready, then Rutschman will play more than maybe 60% of the time. I think that there are very good odds that Basallo is not 100% ready yet, and that he will either be more of a bench bat or, like a lot of Orioles prospects over the last couple of years, find himself back in AAA for a while.
All right, so Orrico took a shot at Bubba, so now Bubba, you get to take a shot at me. I mentioned before that Will Smith was a guy I felt really good as a value play, but you don't really care for him now, do you?
To be fair, I didn't put Rutschman as my bust because I read the outline. I was being respectful. Didn't know Will Smith was on this either. But Will Smith is a guy that I've had a beef with for years because he used to be a top 5 ADP catcher. He's 9th now, so I'll say the price is getting more palatable with Will Smith. But with Will Smith, he had a great year last year, 296 average, 17 homers, 110 games. That's a problem. As we talked about, catchers need to accumulate for the most part, need to play games. And the reason why, not just injuries, there's this guy, he really good at baseball in LA that plays DH. Yeah. Which means there's no room at the end for Will Smith to DH. That will cut into playing time. So he has to stay healthy. Very difficult for catchers. Also going to be 31. One of the oldest catchers we've talked about on the entire show, which says a lot. And I mentioned the 295 last year. Prior to that, 248, 261, 260, 258. He's more of a 255, 260 hitter, which is still good. That's fine. But if he's going to hit 255, get you 15 to 20 home runs, depends on games played, he really, really has to maximize things to make it work. There's a lot of what if in Will Smith that always concerns me. I think he's a great player. I think he's more of a JTR than a top 5 catcher.
All right, that brings us to the must-have guys, which is funny because Joe Orrico's must-have guy is Will Smith. Let's go. Oh, I love this. I told you it was going to get personal at the end here.
All right, so here's my case for why I really like Will Smith.
Well, it's going to be 2 against 1, Bubba. I'm sorry, buddy. Go ahead, Orrico. You got the floor.
Now, look, Will Smith ended my team's season in brutal fashion. So I'm going out
and
on
you still picked him. That is amazing. And you still picked him anyway. That really says a lot.
First point in Will Smith.
Is the shortstop preview Miguel Rojas, or how are we going about this?
Joe Orrico is all business. It's never personal. Okay, that's how Joe Orrico rolls.
That's a Godfather quote. Another Robert Duvall tribute. Let's go. All right, Will Smith. Before Ohtani got there, if you look at 21, 22, you're looking at 500 plus plate appearances in those seasons. I think even with Ohtani there in 2024, it was 544 plate appearances. So that's kind of been the baseline with or without Ohtani. Last year, he ended up missing almost, I think, an entire month of the season. It was the end of the season because of the hand injury. And he wasn't even starting to begin the playoffs. I think they had Dalton rushing behind the plate to begin in the playoffs. But I think if he's healthy, and again, that is a question mark for everybody, but presuming that he doesn't have the hand issue, I think he can get you to 130 games with 550 plate appearances, give you 20-ish homers. I agree with Bubba that you're not getting a 153 WRC plus or anything close to it, but 125, if he's hitting 260 with 25 homers, that lineup is just absolutely ridiculous. The guys hitting in front of him are projected to be Ohtani, Betts, Tucker, and Freeman, and then Smith hitting 5. I mean, maybe they mix and match with Teoscar, Muncy a little bit there, but prime RBI spot. He's cheaper than he usually is. If you're looking at NFBC data, he's outside of the top 100 picks as the 9th catcher. I think that the value is there for Will Smith. About 30 picks later than usual. I think he's usually about 70 or so ADP the last few years. So I'll take a little bit of a discount there and be pretty happy with him as my first catcher. Or maybe if I go for an early guy, then take him as my second catcher and just corner the position.
I still like him a little bit later than his overall ADP, which is right around 100 overall in the consensus ADP. Like I would still take Yuri Perez over him. I would definitely take Nolan McLean over him. Those are 2 players right around there. But after that, I think it's up for discussion. Some other guys were like Raisel Iglesias. There's no way I'm taking him over Will Smith. You know me and closers, we don't get along. Like, I'm just not going to do that. So, Bubba, give me your must-have, and maybe it's a player, maybe it's a philosophy when it comes to catchers, since you are the guru of it.
Yeah, it's more I wanted to put a bow tie on most of this. I'm not super picky early on. Like Joe's mentioned a few times, I do a lot of 2-catcher leagues, so I still want one of the top 7, 8 guys that we've talked about today. So I'll leave with a lot of King William Contreras. We talked about the Goose is loose. I like him. There's a lot of Goodman. I like Baldwin. I want one of those guys that's just a stable, steady guy. I'll rarely ever pay for Cal Raleigh just because the price is too high for me. If you're in a 1-catcher league, though, like if you're talking must-haves, I almost find it's not a must-have. It's what's your last one is what you want in a 1-catcher league. Yeah. I wouldn't force your hand in a 1-catcher league. We talked about a lot of guys that we'd be like Francisco Alvarez has the upside to go nuts. We talked about a few others, and like Kyle Teel, like I mentioned, I would love to have him. I guess if I had to pick one must-have, Kyle Teel is my most rostered catcher so far in like the 11 drafts I've already done. I love Kyle Teel. So
I like Teel.
If you want to go that route,
leagues last year,
like
when he got
called poor man JTR, I'm a huge fan of him. So I'd say just more so have a strategy going in because prices are inflated at catcher, and just kind of know where your baselines are is where I would go with that.
Yeah, that compression with the 2-catcher league really does change the dynamic of the ADP substantially. In the single catcher league, you'll see, Raleigh will go, Langeliers will go, and then there's going to be like a quiet period of catcher. Let it come to you, because the worst case scenario is you take a Teel and an Alvarez and you hope that you get what you need out of that one spot via both of them, where you play the hot hand or you figure it out. If Alvarez goes stone cold, well, you got the steady Eddie guy who might lack ceiling. But if Alvarez hits, or another one of these guys hits out of nowhere, then you could sit Kyle Teel, who's a little safer, and play the guy who's got the big upside. So great breakdown from the guys here on the catchers. Again, you can see the consensus ranks and ECR, the expert consensus rankings, over at FantasyPros.com. And make sure that you continue watching all the guide shows here. We got the starting pitcher guides coming up next week. Those are going to be hot. We got the outfield guide coming up soon too. They're all here on our YouTube channel. They're all here on the podcast feed to get you caught up on everything you missed this offseason and what the approaches should be and what your approaches could be in 2026. And of course, if you want more insights, you can check out all these guys' work on Fantasy Pros and in the Fantasy Baseball Black Book 2026. Joe Orrico is doing his write-ups in there. Bubba writes up all the relievers and all the catchers too. So the real full breakdowns are all there. You can also check him out on the social media side as well at B Dentrek, but also Bubba Bloom Pod. That's what you got to do. Bubba in the Bloom. It's good times there. Baseball HQ. Bubba's everywhere, man. He's all over the place, and that's why I love him. Bubba, it was great to catch up. I appreciate you taking the time with us to talk about the men behind the plate, because they don't get enough love, and it's nice that finally we got some guys who are swinging the bats a little bit more, huh? Nice change of pace.
It's actually fun.
Yeah, it's actually fun. Joe Orrico, you're always fun. We love having you here on the show as well. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Bubba and Orrico, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.